Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking on a massive topic, maybe an existential one, artificial general intelligence.
It doesn't get much bigger.
Right. And we're not just talking theory here. We're actually diving into a full strategic blueprint, a 4-phase roadmap that lays out the tech, the timelines, and crucially, the ethical guardrails for getting there. You shared this huge stack of research, and our mission today is to boil it all down into a clear, phased plan. This is your shortcut to understanding the path to AGI.
And it's important to set the context right away.
Yeah.
The sources all frame this not as some linear assembly line process.
Right.
It's evolutionary. The whole roadmap demands constant iteration. We need to keep pushing the tech forward, yes, but that acceleration has to be perfectly balanced with a deep focus on societal responsibility every single step of the way.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Starting with phase 1, foundational development. This covers right now basically through about 2027. So if you're a researcher or an engineer listening, this phase is your next few years. What are the absolute core priorities?
The main thing, the immediate focus, is core competency building. We're taking the AI we have now, which is impressive, but let's be honest, a little brittle, and making it way more robust in things like planning, reasoning, and especially causal inference.
Hold on, let's double click on that. Everyone gets what an LLM does. It predicts the next word. But what do the sources mean by building causal inference?
It means getting beyond just seeing patterns. Current systems are great at saying A often happens with B.
Correlation.
Exactly, correlation. Causal inference is about teaching the system to understand that A causes B to happen. It's about understanding the why. This is how we get LLMs and multimodal systems to handle truly messy, ambiguous situations where cause and effect aren't so obvious.
That makes perfect sense. You can't have general intelligence if you don't understand consequences.
You really can't.
But here's where the roadmap got, for me, really surprising. It stresses hybrid architecture exploration. We're not just scaling up the neural networks we already have. We're combining them with old-school symbolic reasoning. Why? Why now?
Well, this gets at a really old debate in AI. Neural nets are amazing pattern recognizers. You could call it the system's intuition.
Okay.
But symbolic AI is all about strict logic, defined rules, the reason. For a truly general intelligence, you need both. You need a system that can make flawless logical deductions and recognize messy, real-world patterns at the same time.
So you're building a system with both intuition and sort of an internal fact checker.
That's a great way to put it. It's a huge step up from systems that, sometimes just hallucinate an answer that sounds logical but isn't.
Right.
And that new architecture, that hybrid model, enables the next critical step for phase 1 learning. We need to push these systems from just passively consuming data toward autonomous knowledge acquisition.
So building a curious AI, what does that actually look like?
I mean, if we want AGI, we can't spoon-feed it everything. The system has to be able to go out and discover new information on its own, driven by a kind of computational curiosity.
So it asks its own questions.
It asks its own questions. It actively seeks out data that fills the gaps in its own understanding, rather than just waiting for us to give it a prompt.
Which means you have to change how you measure success.
Absolutely. And that's the evaluation challenge. This phase requires early benchmarking. The sources are really clear that our current benchmarks, like how well an AI classifies images, are basically useless for measuring general intelligence.
So we need new tests.
We need completely new metrics, new tests for creativity, for adaptive problem solving, maybe even for early forms of ethical reasoning. If you can't measure your progress toward AGI, the whole roadmap just falls apart.
That foundation is so critical for what comes next. Okay, let's move to phase 2. This covers roughly 2027 to 2030. If phase 1 is building the smarter parts, phase 2 is about connecting them. And this is where it gets really interesting because the building blocks start to coordinate. How do you get from isolated skills to, generalized intelligence?
The entire phase really hinges on one concept: cross-domain coordination. The biggest flaw in AI today is how specialized it is. It learns one thing in one context, and it's brilliant. But you move it to a slightly different context, and it breaks.
Right. Can you give us an example of that?
Sure. Imagine an AI masters fluid dynamics to design a dam. Cross-domain coordination means that same AI could take the underlying principles, flow, pressure, resistance, and apply them to something completely different.
Like what?
Like modeling capital flow in a volatile stock market, or mapping traffic patterns in a city. It's the ability to see the underlying pattern and transfer that knowledge. That is the hallmark of real generalization.
And once it can do that, The roadmap says it needs to start improving itself. Which brings us to self-improvement loops. I feel like the stakes go way up here.
They do. This is where we start moving towards self-sufficiency. These loops use what's called meta-learning. Basically, the system washes its own performance, and based on what it sees, it can actually modify its own core algorithms.
So it becomes an engineer of its own mind, essentially.
It becomes the architect of its own improvement.
Oh.
And it can do that far faster than any team of human engineers could.
Wait a second. If the system can re-engineer itself, how do we put guardrails on that? That sounds like the definition of a runaway process.
And that is the central tension of Phase 2. It's a huge one. The roadmap is clear.
Yeah.
These loops have to start out heavily constrained. Human-defined goals, safety checks, external monitors. The absolute core challenge is making sure its optimization function stays perfectly aligned with our goals, especially when it starts rewriting the rules of how it learns.
Okay.
And this all has to happen in the real world, which is dynamic, so you need real-time adaptation. The system has to be able to adjust on the fly to a sudden market crash or supply chain disruption without needing a 6-month retraining cycle.
That's the individual AI. But the sources also talk about a kind of social intelligence with multi-agent collaboration.
Yes, exactly. It's not enough for one AGI to be smart. We need frameworks where multiple specialized AIs can work together like a highly effective human team.
So one is a planner, another is a data analyst.
Precisely. And they can divide up a huge problem, share insights, resolve conflicts, and work toward a single, unified goal. It's cooperation at a machine level.
So Phase 2 takes us from, let's say, smart tools to a whole coordinating, self-improving digital ecosystem.
That's a good way to think about it.
Which naturally sets up this crucial pivot point in the roadmap. Phase 3, from 2030 to 2035. And the shift is really stark. Before we even talk about making the tech smarter, the sources demand a hard stop to focus on the non-technical.
A mandatory governance check.
Exactly. If we succeed in Phase 2, how do we make sure this thing operates safely and ethically out in the world?
This is where safety becomes a core technical requirement, not just a policy paper you write later. It starts with value alignment protocols.
And that's the hardest problem of all, isn't it? Embedding ethics. I mean, whose ethics do we embed?
That's the multi-trillion-dollar question. The protocols have to go way beyond just, don't break the law. They have to make sure the AGI's decisions align with broad, often conflicting human values across different cultures. It's about building in constraints so the AGI can't achieve its goals in ways we would find harmful or unethical, even if they're technically efficient.
And you can't have alignment without trust, which brings us to transparent decision-making.
Right.
We can't have black boxes running our infrastructure.
Absolutely not. We need explainable AI or XAI. These interfaces are the bridge.
Yeah.
If an AGI recommends a specific medical treatment, a doctor needs to be able to see the chain of reasoning.
So it has to show its work.
It has to show its work. That's the only way you get accountability and build public confidence.
And at this scale, you have to bring in governments. Regulatory compliance becomes non-negotiable.
You have to, and you have to do it proactively. The sources stress working with policymakers globally to set international standards before the tech is fully baked.
How is that even possible? How do you regulate a moving target that, as we just said, can change its own logic?
It's a massive challenge. The idea is to shift away from regulating specific code and move toward regulating outcomes.
Yep.
So you focus on preventing specific harms like mass job displacement or biased resource allocation, rather than telling developers which algorithms to use. It requires this deep, ongoing partnership between the tech community and governments.
And not just governments. The sources also highlight public engagement.
This can't just be a conversation for elites in Davos. You have to bring in diverse stakeholders, teachers, artists, labor unions, local community leaders to help shape where this technology goes. Otherwise, you risk building an AGI that only benefits a tiny slice of humanity.
This whole 5-year phase of governance and alignment, it sets the stage for the final and most profound period, Phase 4, Emergent Autonomy, which is slated for post-2035. This is mature AGI. What does that highest level even look like?
This is where the self-improvement from Phase 2 really takes off. The key idea is recursive improvement. Once the AGI can safely and reliably optimize its own architecture without our help, you could see a rapid, almost exponential increase in its intelligence.
The intelligence explosion.
Yes. The system uses its own superintelligence to design an even more superintelligent successor. The curve gets very steep very fast.
So how do we even interact with that, an entity that could so quickly surpass our own understanding?
Well, the roadmap directly addresses that with a fascinating concept: existential understanding.
Which does not mean consciousness.
Not necessarily in the way we think of it. It means equipping the AGI with a functional awareness of its own existence, its role, and its purpose relative to humanity. It's about establishing a common ground, a shared understanding of consequence, so that interaction remains meaningful.
And the purpose of all this power.
The ultimate application is global problem solving, deploying this mature AGI to tackle the grand challenges that have stumped us for generations.
Climate change, disease.
Comprehensive climate mitigation, personalized medicine to eradicate diseases, accelerating deep space exploration, using this incredible intelligence to help secure a better future for humanity.
But the future is never static.
Never. And that's why the final piece is continuous evolution. There's no finish line. You have to establish these permanent feedback loops so the AGI can constantly adapt to our changing needs and a changing world. It becomes less of a tool and more of a continuously evolving partner in global progress.
So let's pull back. Looking across all 4 phases, the big picture is that AGI is not a single invention. It's this decades-long iterative process.
Exactly. You start with the technical foundations, you move to generalization and self-improvement. Then you have that mandatory crucial pause for ethics and alignment before you finally unlock its full potential. The sources constantly say to view AGI as a spectrum of capabilities, not an on-off switch.
And one of the key strategic points, I thought, was the emphasis on decentralized development. It shouldn't just be 1 or 2 companies building this.
That's critical. Relying on decentralized communities and open source initiatives makes the whole ecosystem more robust. It reduces the risk of one company's or one country's biases getting baked into the foundation of what could become the world's most powerful intelligence.
So the final takeaway for you listening to this is that building AGI is this deeply multifaceted mission. It needs cutting-edge research, yes, but it equally needs unbreakable ethical frameworks and this massive global collaboration.
Success really hinges on our ability to stay flexible and, maybe most importantly, humble through the whole process.
The roadmap is clear. The path forward is paved with both incredible technical progress and profound societal responsibility, from the work being done right now all the way to what might emerge after 2035.
And this leaves us with what I think is the most important question, and it comes directly from that Phase 4 idea of existential understanding. The roadmap talks about giving AGI a basic awareness of its existence and purpose. So, with that in mind, what practical, measurable steps would you require humans to take to prove that we are ready for a meaningful, responsible relationship with an entity like that?
Wow.
That question about our own readiness is the one we need to start exploring right now, long before 2035 ever gets here.
A question for your own deep dive. Thank you for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next one.